Okay, so Empower Semiconductor, you are attending the Open Compute Project EMEA Summit a little bit later, I think, this month. And I guess good place to start for those not familiar with OCP, just a bit of an overview of what it is, its aims and objectives.
Yeah, and thanks, first of all, thanks for having me and Empower, Phil. So OCP, really the Open Compute Project, initiated back in 2011. And there was a group of engineers at Facebook, now Meta, that created essentially or wanted to design the most energy efficient data center. Now, fast forward to today, right? So about 15 years later, and that, to some extent, reasonable scope has essentially rallied over 450 members from hyperscalers, large corporations, startups such as ourselves, academia, researchers, universities. And the goal, all of them are, of course, within the data center IT infrastructure. And the goal is to really define technology norms, right, that will enable the most efficient data center and the most scalable computing in general, right? How they're going to do that? By driving efficiencies, by improving sustainability. And interesting to note that the tagline of OCP is really from from ideas to impact, right? It's not a standardization body, but they're really looking forward to get together people that matter in that industry to really shaping the future of data centers. So in that aspect, it was very logical for Empower to join them. And we did early this year, as January 25, actually, we became a startup member of that community.
Okay, and at the summit itself, I guess you pretty much explained, but the focus is on sustainability, energy efficiency, and I guess heat reuse is becoming increasingly a focus. And we can't escape AIs are here, then everywhere. So I presume that's going to get a bit of coverage as well. Is that right?
Yes, you bet. AI is going to be front and center. As a matter of fact, the OCP CEO, George Chaparian, opened his keynote last year by essentially stating that the summit would have to be AI-centric or wouldn't happen. Right? Now, once we said that, it's of course in the context of sustainability, right? But that can take different form. The most obvious one is energy availability and energy use within the data centers, but it also expands to where that energy gets wasted. You alluded to the heat being generated. That's a big issue, or not, that's a big topic within the data center industry. So we're looking at how to best reuse that. And of course, performance and scalability are two aspects that are alongside the sustainability protocol that are getting in place, right? Those are really the driving force behind the demand for AI, as well as the need for innovation in that space.
Yeah, and in a minute we're going to discuss what Empower Semiconductor is showing at the event, your reason for going. But I guess before that, it'd be nice to understand your perspective, if you like, on the data center industry. Clearly, as you've explained, it's kind of got two responsibilities. It's got to provide the compute, and AI is obviously increasing that compute demand, and then it's got sustainability responsibilities. So, and potentially they're not always compatible. So just how would you characterize the way in which the data center industry is coping with those sort of twin objectives, which I say may not always be helping each other, shall we say?
Yeah, and I think you're touching it really smack on here. AI is we are at a pivotal juncture, and AI is poised to drive what we call, I guess, the information age, right? And whether we like it or not, right? As a matter of fact, it's probably anyone's guess how AI is really going to impact our lives in the next future. But we know it's going to be there in one way or another. And the most part of that activity is going to take place within data centers. Now, more to your point about the digital and sustainability objectives being not always compatible, right? I'm sure you're familiar with the net zero goal, right? Which for some are as early as 2030. Now, if you're looking from a design cycle within, say, a data center rack, right? Those design cycles are 2 to 3 years of duration. So it really means that we are about 2 to 3 generations away from that milestone. And that can be a very ambitious goal and a pretty daunting task for most of us. Now, I'm not sure if we as consumer are ready to curb our appetite for performance. So there is no doubt in my mind, I would say that all players are looking at sustainability in that context. However, there is a race between sustainability and performance. Now, which one will prevail, at least in the short term, is probably up for debate. But there's no doubt that all those companies are looking at those two aspects in conjunction because one, frankly, cannot go without the other.
And this question, it might be more difficult to answer, but in terms of the if you like, what's been achieved so far by the data center industry in terms of these sort of twin objectives, and certainly trying to be as sustainable as possible, what still needs to be done? So are we, if you like, sort of roughly halfway to where they need to get? Are we less than halfway? Is it possible to sort of quantify where we are and where we need to be, if you like?
Oh wow! Well, I wouldn't venture to quantify that, frankly, because I'm not sure I'm that qualified. But I feel a lot has been made already. Now, whether that's enough is it's probably a question to be asked. But it's interesting to look at, for instance, what happened from 2015 to 2019. Data centers consumption, energy consumption, was about stable, while the compute and the workload was increasing. Now, it's no doubt that in the past 4 to 5 years, the nickname AI revolution has placed a tremendous challenge or even a bigger challenge in front of our industry. So we're back to your previous question, right? How quickly, and I would say how smartly, right, can we improve sustainability? Because that's a critical aspect of how AI now is developing.
Okay, and in terms of Empower Semiconductor, your involvement at the OCP EMEA Summit, I think, if I remember correctly, you'll be showing your latest advancements for the Crescendo vertical power solution. And I think the big news, if you like, is this platform is now complete, so the full chipset will be in view. So give us the sort of high level view, and then you can talk us through the couple of the demos. But first off, what it is you've achieved, with this full chipset.
Yeah, so you're correct. Our chipset, nicknamed Crescendo, our platform, is now complete and will be on show at OCP in Dublin in about next week now. And if you allow me an analogy, right, what we've achieved is essentially a combination of a chipset comprises of two parts, which I like to call the brain and the muscles. Now, my engineering team will probably take offense to that. But they're not here, so I can do whatever I want. But essentially, it has a supervisor, which is the brain, and that's what implements the communication, the direct communication with the system, as well as the management of the power domain. The muscles, on the other hand, are more than a traditional power stage, right? We integrate into a single device, inductors, capacitors, power FETs, and we are able to achieve that in less than 2.5 millimeter thick package. Now, what that allows, combined with our wide bandwidth, we essentially eliminate the typical capacitor banks that are found below traditional high power SoC. And we replace that with our own power conversion devices. So we're bringing the power conversion, the last stage of power conversion, directly underneath the SoC. Hence, with that so-called vertical power delivery comes several benefits: power density, system efficiency, and performance.
Okay, and in terms of the specific demos at the event, I think there are two. So you're demoing transient response and then terminal performance. So talk us through each of those, if you will.
Yeah, so the transient response is our main demo, right? And it's really showcasing our ability to respond to a steep and large load step virtually in nanoseconds. Now, those load steps typically happen when a processor goes from standby to full power, right? And that we do that, so as I said, in nanoseconds with a reduced voltage excursion. It's a critical ability for any data centers or any AI, frankly, chipset or architecture, because typically the systems have to throttle down, waiting for their power supply to come back into regulation. So we remove all that latency So we're allowing data centers to process more data in a shorter amount of time. And we also reduce the pre-positioning of the voltage to mitigate that voltage exertion to a lower level. So we're essentially saving energy in that aspect. The second thing that visitors at OCP will be able to see is the power density of this solution that I was alluding to, as well as its ability to be located right underneath the processor. As I said, we believe that we have a true vertical power delivery solution, and we're showing that at that time. Now, on the thermal performance, we are going to be showing as well some data there, but it's going to be slightly indirectly in the sense that the data that's going to be showing there is the thermal performance of our package, but for practical reasons, I would say it's a little harder to take a full thermal performance demo on the road and especially across the pond at this point.
That's fair enough. And maybe just before we finish, it'd be good to understand a little bit more about your Empower Semiconductor, how you're developing as a company, because you say you're still a relatively new organization. The technology side sounds like it's going really well, but obviously if there's anything else that's going to be added, let us know. But also, I guess at the same time as you're working on that side, you're looking at partnering, improving, increasing customer base. So just whatever you can share, if you like, on the roadmap, both sort of technology and on the business side.
Yeah, well, it's certainly an exciting time, exciting time for us. So we feel that we have a very compelling technology, one that combines both those performance and sustainability aspects that we talked about. And our initial announcement of the platform last October has essentially generated a lot of interest. So we are already working with several key players in that industry and developing and looking at their design. Now, on the partnership and commercial front, we are focused on the last stage of conversion. So essentially what feeds the power processor, the AI processors at the core. But we're partnering with companies to essentially expand the solution to be a little more complete, essentially having 48 volt down to core combination, as well as commercially with expanding our sales and representative networks in areas where it matters for the AI industry, typically Taiwan and those kind of areas where we're going to find a lot of manufacturing for data centers rack, as well as high performance computing there. So we're expanding on all those fronts. As I said, pretty exciting time, pretty busy time for us.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're able to say, I mean, would you say, I mean, when the business was launched, I'm sure you had sort of plans and objectives. Would you say that you're ahead of where you thought you might be by now, bearing in mind what's going on, or you're on course, or just give us some sort of idea as to how exciting progress has been to date and what else you can see out there, I suppose.
Well, I'm in marketing and sales, so my timeline is always late compared to what we had in mind originally. So we are catching up on that, but we feel we are a little ahead of where the industry needs to be, at least for the moment. There's no doubt that it's going to be pushing us even further, but we're on that. So specifically for the upcoming months for us, I would say we're very busy into putting the last steps of releasing the Crescendo platform to production. So we're doing the full characterization, the qualification. We expect that to be completed by early Q4 this year. In parallel, our application team, as I alluded to before, we're working with some alpha customers to bring their design to essentially to Crescendo and power up their design. And also in parallel, of course, we have already started working on the next generation solutions. And with that, we're aiming to push the boundaries of performance and power density even further than where we are today.
Okay, I mean, it's been great to chat, and it does sound very exciting. And clearly, OCP Summit's a great place to come and find you, and maybe we can touch base in the second half of the year to find out, on the current rate of progress. There'll be plenty more to discuss then, shall we say? But at least for now, Eric, I'm really grateful for your time, and it's been great to chat. So Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil.